Okay, welcome everyone. It is 12:01 here Pacific and 3 o'clock Eastern. We're ready to welcome all of you to this presentation, the sixth in the webinar series for SMARTfit. Again, my name is Mike Studer, and I'm going to be joining you today, hosting, working with, collaborating with you, along with my colleague, Kathy Lamberti. And so this effort, this installment is going to be very engaging for you. We're going to be looking for opportunities to discuss and innovate with you. Let's get started right away. The topic is gamification and motivation in brain health. Again, my name is Mike Studer. A very brief bio on me. Most importantly, contact information down there for me if you should have questions that are not addressed today and you would like to have them addressed after the webinar. I'll be joined today, I'm pleased to announce, I'll be joined by Kathy Lamberti, the CEO of SMARTfit, and you can see her bio there. Together, we have over 65 years of experience here in the health and wellness space, industry, and otherwise. Our objectives today, you know them, you've read them, you signed up. I'm going to respect your intelligence and leave them there for you to read and not read them to you. And you can see all four of them across the two slides now. We know that learning requires neuroplasticity, and that is, in fact, where we're going to start today when we talk about motivation and learning and health and wellness. We have to know what neuroplasticity looks like, and here's 6 different attributions of health that can contribute to neuroplasticity. I'll let you read these for a moment with just a couple of highlights. We definitely need some sort of stimulus, right? And need a reason, a demand to connect new neurons. When we have that demand recognized in the brain, even if you don't recognize it consciously, your brain is making chemical attractions to connect neurons, plural, for more efficiency, for learning, for storing that because it felt good, worked well, or protected me. From there, we expand and reinforce those connections. We sprout, we arborize, we create dendrites with long roots and connected branches to be reductive. To facilitate neuroplasticity, we may have experiences, environments, people we work with, services, processes, products, or tools that can give us a more engaged experience, that can light the brain up, or in matters that are discussed nowadays, prime the brain, neuromodulate the brain. And that can be done in a very reductive way through fertilizers, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, insulin-like growth factor, and many others beyond the scope today. Along the way, we need enough blood supply to support this new growth and connections. And now, more than ever, we've recognized we need sleep. Is that all? Did I leave anything out? Maybe I did. Maybe we need motivation. We need specificity, something that I need, something that I recognize that I need, salience, and hope. Am I getting better? Is this working for me? So, how do we create today's theme, optimal conditions for motivation? Because it is an essential ingredient for neuroplasticity. So, as I've mentioned, we need sleep, but as you all know, we need nutrition, and some of us want play or rest or social connection. And some of us feel the need to be productive more than playful. Hope and improvement. Am I getting better? Is this working for me? Salient tasks and a state change. We'll get to that in a moment. In this program for neuroplasticity, rehabilitative, prehabilitative, health, recovery, rehabilitation, wellness, skill development, or otherwise, you may benefit from a degree of routine, some stimulus in novelty that was new, that can be quite dopaminergic, something that exerted me physically or cognitively, some repetitions so I get it and can process it and make those connections, some unload, load, unload, meaning made it easy for me, made it too hard for me or just hard enough. And then you came back and took that difficulty away. And I'm surprised to see how well I did. Unexpected wins, personalized challenges. This feels right for me. And medical stability. If you don't have these things, they will detract from your capacities and neuroplasticity. All of them, period, all of these are affected by motivation. So our focus today, talking about a platform, a program, a process, a library, an entire system that devotes itself to helping individuals in all the different definitions of cognition, actually also helps with motivation. And you see here the different comments, bullet points, considerations, or attributes within cognition and motivation that we all face on a regular basis. But motivation itself, focusing there for the next several slides, we know is impacted by exactly what I called out in the last slide. None of these mean motivation. Motivation means none of these things, but they are correlated and they are affected by one another. Motivation is critical, if not crucial, in rehabilitation and in healthy aging. Again, across the bullet points that I share with you. If you don't have self-efficacy, you don't think you can improve. That's going to damage your motivation. If you have predictive processing that suggests that you have not been able to in the past, and you predict, your predictive brain will suggest that you will not be able to, which will also subtract away from your rehab or prehabilitation efforts. If you have established confirmation biases regarding the need for help, the difficulty level you can't manage, the success that you expect to have, or the potential you do or don't think you have, that will affect your performance. Your belief, this will work for me, this person, healthcare provider, this process, this product, this system, this is good, I've heard great things about it, or a nocebo, having no belief will also subtract. And finally, not an analogy for, not a synonym of, but a direct relationship to motivation is engagement. So what's the vicious cycle or impact of low motivation? You drop your attention, you drop your awareness, you drop your compliance, you see no point in doing your home exercises at home or participating with full effort here in the clinic or in the assisted retirement village living community, active aging, senior aging community. In their programs, you stop attending classes, you don't react as quickly, you're not as engaged, and you drop your self-efficacy because you don't expect to improve. You may be familiar with the fact that this has underpinnings directly within the brain. Neurons that fire together, I don't think I'll be able to wire together. There, I wasn't able to. You make very few new connections when you don't expect that you are in a state wherein you can improve. However, the reverse is also true. When I believe I can improve and I think this is going to work for me, I'm in a neuromodulated, primed brain. I can make more of those connections and I see confirmation bias, the wins, the improvements, and I now create a predictive processing brain that expects myself to continue to improve. I'm motivated and I'm engaged. So in suppressed motivation, when I walk, I think I'm going to fall. If I'm compelled to remember something, I think I'm going to make an error. If I need to participate, I believe it's going to exhaust me. If I'm compelled to dance, I think I'm going to be embarrassed. So that suppressed motivation continues within this theme of neurons that fire together, wire together, so that when I'm in that situation, I already expect what the result is going to be. And now I'm connecting sensations with environments or tasks. When I walk, I'm going to now be fearful of falling. Neurons that fire together wire together. And so a predictive processing is established in my brain that gives me the impression that I will have these negative outcomes. It is suppressing my motivation. So, all right, that's fine. Enough negativity already. We've defined motivation. We know how it can limit us, but how can we maximize it? Well, we need to be drill sergeanting. We need to tell people they're doing better than they think they are, or that they have the ability, or if they don't do something about it, they're going to lose more. We need to use fear mongering. No, that's not the right pathway. We need to be cheerleaders. We need to shift all of that drill sergeanting energy into cheerleaders. You're doing great. This is so good. You're doing so well. Try another repetition. Come back next week. Doesn't this feel wonderful to you? Can't you see how much you're improving? And as you can see, that might also fall on deaf ears very quickly for many people as well. So what we need to do is make all tasks very easy so people feel like they're winners. So they feel like they're always winning. Like Usain Bolt, I'm going to line up and I know I'm going to win. So he's motivated, he's engaged, right? So it's the person who's addicted to gambling who thinks they're always going to win. He's going to reinforce his gambling because he's always winning. And that's what we need to attract him to come back to the casino. That's not the case either, because Michael Jordan walked away from a winning season, the third winning season, the third NBA championship. Sometimes when we win too often, if it feels too easy, we're no longer as motivated or as engaged. We're looking for something that's challenging me enough. I need something that is going to compel me to work hard, because I'm not positive this is a guaranteed win. So you see 3 different decades of Rory McIlroy here. Near misses are motivating unless they come in bunches. I want to come back and win that. I almost won. So what we see in the world of therapy and in health and wellness is a prime motivator can be unexpected successes that occur just frequently enough to satisfy this individual's desires. We call them moments of unexpected success in therapy, or if you like the acronym, MUST. I expected failure. I did better than I thought I would. Maybe I'll actually do better next time, and I elevate my optimism. It's not because you coerced me, you cheered me, or you made it too easy for me. We celebrate the unexpected successes and benefit from the near misses. So dopamine is part of what can improve an individual's motivation, but it's a very short and reductive statement to say that dopamine, more of it, will make more motivation. We need experiences that are dopaminergic, facilitate dopamine, to actually increase motivation. And that comes in, let's say, 3 different, but I might tell you in just a moment, 4 different mechanisms or methods. Surprise, as I just mentioned. I'm surprised I did well. Reward prediction error. I predicted low and surprised myself. Novelty, I referred to that earlier. Something new. Here's a challenge. Anticipation. I'm going to try hard and prepare myself for this. Or, as you may recognize, anticipation of an upcoming meal, a movie, a date you're going to go out on. All of those, as they lead up, are also dopaminergic through anticipation. But the story doesn't stop there. As I alluded to, there's one more. It also is true that pursuit, the mere pursuit of a goal, whether that be I want to be healthy when I turn 80, or continue to preserve my health and wellness, or the near miss effect. I didn't win, but I was close. I want to pursue that again. Now we have 4 different tracks by which we can promote motivation through dopamine. So now if we look back at the science on these two elements that we talked about and introduced earlier, we have cognition. And if you like the acronym CREEPT, you see that there are several things that can temporarily, some longer than others, promote cognition, elevate performance in cognition. Cold, rest, that could be a nap or sleep. Expectations that I'll do well, I'm good at math. Exertion, brief, high intensity exertion, something that seems procedural or familiar. Errors can be motivating, and divided attention can also be, let's just say, priming for my cognition. So all of these things can prime cognition. What can prime motivation? Exertion. Well, there's a commonality between the two. A little bit of success, but not routine success. Enough challenge that I prefer. An awareness that I'm getting better or that I still have some things to work on. Purposeful activities and self-efficacy that I can control some of my outcome. So now let's shift it all back to motivation again, and let's look at that escape. And you see all of them spelled out for you here. I don't want to insult you by reading them to you. I'll give you a moment to take a look at that because we're building on that from here. This is how a successful platform, rehabilitation program, and engagement, even a marketing campaign to compel individuals to consume could be spelled out here. But we understand that in healthcare and wellness, to be able to motivate a single person's brain, we have options. We don't have to use every single one of them, but now you've had a chance to read over them and see, if I'm stuck with this person, I have options. So now let's take self-efficacy and motivation. That was the E part at the bottom there, E for efficacy. Albert Bandura, 1977, defined self-efficacy. We like to think that we can promote it, but we really can't teach it. So I like to say, and I have been saying for the last 8 years, people don't learn self-efficacy. You can't tell them to be hopeful. They need to earn it. They need to earn it through experiences. So there are several non-pharmacologic interventions that can increase an individual's motivation. It isn't true that all of these will work for all people. But you'll notice here, these will all also positively impact an individual's self-efficacy. And remember, personalities matter here. So for an individual that likes to gamify, turn things into small games and compete, which we'll talk more about in a minute, that may work. Loss aversion. I don't want to let myself get like that. Let that happen to myself again, as long as it's not fear-mongering. For some people, that can work. Person-specific engagement. This feels fun to me. This is familiar to me. This is challenging enough. And you see all the rest here, surprising wins. You recognize that those 4 different routes or pathways for motivation through dopamine are all built within these bullet points. So let's take on gamification, and let's be very clear that gamification is not playing a board game or having something be in a game. It is taking things that are non-game-like and making them game-like. And it comes in 4 different values or attributes, and I've got them spelled out for you here. But again, let's use pictures. They speak 1,000. So points, you put it in, you put a location into your phone, you used an app, and it told you were going to make it there at 7:57 p.m., but you celebrated the fact that you beat it by 2 or 3 minutes. So that's a gamified experience, just like a high score would be in a video game or otherwise. Levels, you've arrived to platinum level, or level 3 is unlocked. You're now permitted to play a new level because of your performance. Rewards, an extra ball, an extra life, and streak like Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak or Mariah Carey's, let's call it 73 weeks straight as #1 single with We Belong Together. Points, levels, rewards, and streaks. Gamification comes in many different fashions. And we know that this motivates many, but not all people to increase their intensity, which benefits neuroplasticity, to compete in a high score, to have enhanced expectancies or hope that I'm going to improve more, and to ultimately have self-efficacy that my effort matters. So gamification can be dopaminergic, most often is, will be a transient, temporary antidepressant, not permanent, will elevate your cognitive performance when you are engaged via a dopaminergic reward, novelty, pursuit, and the like. But consistently choosing to do something that you think is healthy for yourself, investing in yourself, compelling your patients, your clients to do the same is also going to be dopaminergic and serotonergic. And the serotonergic part there may help for individuals to have a longer term benefit in motivation. So in gamification, why it works is clearly here. Becoming externally focused on a score and forgetting about you're doing something that would have otherwise, if you were focused on it, caused you to feel fearful. But wait, I can't balance like that. Allowing you to compete against yourself or other people in a dyad partner or against a normalized score that is what is expected of persons like you. We know that gamification works because it builds up positive expectations, helps people redefine their own identity. I'm a winner. I'm recovering. I'm beating Parkinson's disease. It gives us sustained opportunities to attend and therefore builds our attentional reserves, our network, and creates a pivot in our predictive processing from I cannot win to I'm winning more often than I thought I could. And again, remember that predictive brain, if that's not something you're already familiar with, it may be something you want to look up because it is very much a highlight of neuroscience right now and behavioral economics. So we understand that there's the possibility of a reward prediction error or a positive prediction error when I think poorly about myself or am prone to self-deprecating statements. We don't talk our patients and clients out of that. We give them opportunities to teach themselves out of it. Remember, people don't learn self-efficacy, they earn it. So having a positive prediction error is a good opportunity, whether it's in a near miss or a surprising win. You see the expectations that I've built for you here. Some of you will identify with those in these bullet points. You expect this, but this happened. And allowing an individual to redefine those experiences for themselves, even in so much as expecting a loss, but scoring a new personal best. Remember, Michael Jordan said right here, he missed more than 9,000 shots. He lost over 300 games. And in 26 times, he took the final shot and missed it. You could put the loss on him, but he comes back with a growth mindset because the near miss is motivational. Not for everybody, and this isn't as rare as Michael Jordan is. Let your patients and clients have this experience as well. Malcolm Gladwell speaks to this very well on near misses in a podcast on the Pushkin Network, seeing the near miss effect as a model by which we can help individuals into a greater growth mindset, to participate more, to strive, to achieve, to pursue. So when your trials exceed your baseline expectations, you have wins even amongst those losses, and those losses are dopaminergic equally as well. Now, loss aversion is separate from gamification, and it refers to an individual's tendency to be motivated so that they don't incur a loss in finances and in health or in other matters later on in life. It was defined initially by Daniel Kahneman and his colleague Amos Tversky. It is one of the earliest principles of behavioral economics, and it is motivational because it directs energies toward preservation. People can work very, very hard to loss avert, and Kahneman and Tversky suggested they could work harder for loss aversion than for rewards. Now, loss aversion could look like this. I'm working on my reaction speed, my thinking skills, my balance, or both of them at once. Another principle and pathway for motivation could be mastery. As Nolan Bushnell said, inventor of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese's, the best games are easy to learn and difficult to master. But mastery, I'm getting better at this. I'm very good at this. Or as I mentioned earlier, I'm beating Parkinson's disease, is additionally another avenue for motivation. So I direct my energies to preserve or to become the most proficient at. Now we understand that play is another separate possible avenue for motivation. Carl Jung, Albert Einstein, Abraham Maslow, formidable quotes there about play. Lights up the brain, causes the brain to speak, if you will, interhemispherically, and creates low pressure opportunities to just experiment and see what I can do. So now the science truly in all of this demonstrates that there is a degree of benefit for all people at different levels of challenge. We want to improve or neuroplastically develop resources in these reward networks that tolerate a near miss, that seek out and predict there may still be better ahead. The endowment effect, I want to keep what I've worked to learn or earn, keep my current health status, my knowledge bases, my executive faculties. There's the effort effect. Wow, that was really rewarding because of how hard I worked. And then finally, an intermittent reward, which has very many thousands of papers talking about the benefits of intermittent rewards in learning, in challenge, even going back to Pavlov's dog. Will I win this time? And associating an experience with a potential for a positive. So the neurophysiologic benefits of feeling like I might do better, which is basically where I left off, I might get a reward this time, can be correlated in with that mastery experience. I'm getting good at this. I'm a natural. And we want people to have that type of positive self-impression, but we can't talk them into it. We want to give people a chance to succeed and a frequency to succeed that is in keeping with their preferences. So a gaming platform that's got some artificial, if not augmented intelligence that recognizes you're getting good at this, your streaks have built up, let's make it a little bit harder, is in fact where the sweet sauce lies. So if I have enhanced expectancies, I might try harder, tolerate more errors, innovate a little bit more, and in fact, come back and do things that might help me work on my home exercises and create mental imagery, visualization, practice away from performance. So errors are important in rehabilitation unless they come too frequently, because remember the near miss, wins are bigger after errors. Challenge causes me to grind, make more effort, establish that grit that Angela Duckworth talked about in her book, causes me to invest more attention and more intensity. And again, success has become more meaningful. So if we were to wrap up here and talk about the pathway toward a successful outcome, it could look like this. Start at a difficulty level that matches me, my preference, based on potentially my therapist's recommendations or the testing results that came out of a platform. So if you measure my abilities and let me playfully compete against what I should be able to do in attributes and executive functions that I need help in, allow me to see those wins, but don't just tell me that I'm great. Give me the score. And then challenge me more as my appetite allows and prefers. So am I talking about rehabilitation here? Or am I talking about prehabilitation and wellness? In fact, it can be helpful for both. So the pathway to a successful outcome is in understanding that engagement, whatever motivates me, is in fact in the eyes of the beholder. What motivation looks like will be different from person to person, but now, today, I've given you options so that you can make that more personalized for yourself. Now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kathy Lamberti, who's going to take us on from here and show us how this can be done.
All right. So before we start, I would like to just share a couple of little stories from customers of ours that have stuck with me. The first one was an 81-year-old woman who had never been to the gym in her entire life. She had a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, and she was absolutely never going to exercise, and this was not her thing. Well, a couple of her friends dragged her into the YMCA in Buffalo and got her to join a 12-week class. Well, she started off with her walker and would not let go of the walker. So she was doing all of the round robin exercises with her walker. And when she got to the SMARTfit system, she would hold on the side of the SMARTfit system and use one hand to apply the answers. Well, 3 weeks after that, she set the walker aside. And the best of all of this was just how fast this works when you're motivated and having fun with your friends. And suddenly those fears drop and you just get in the game of it. At the end of 12 weeks, at the end of 12 weeks, she was shopping in the local supermarket without her walker. Now, that to me is a success story and how fast this can work. Um, Second story was last year. I was in New York City at a long-term care facility, the Bristol, and I met a woman again. I believe she was in her 90s, and she hopped on the system and blew my mind just how amazingly fast she was at all the high cognitive games. So, I tried my hand. There's no way I could even compete with her. And I said to her, "What are you doing? How are you doing this?" She said, "Well, they told me I should come once a week. And to heck with that, I'm here every single day." And you just had to see this woman so happy, so motivated, and self-esteem through the roof. So here's someone in a long-term care facility. My final story is Sam Donald. We trained him at USC. He came regularly and trained on the SmartFit system. And when I saw him win the Super Bowl this year, I was just beside myself. Absolutely. This works for everybody. And I'm going to sneak in one more little story here, and that is what we see in Centers for Autism. It is just amazing, just absolutely amazing to see these children get motivated and engage in ways that their parents have never seen. So all around, the game of my life in creating SmartFit has been a tough journey. There have been many moments when we didn't know we would pull this off. And then there've been layers and layers and layers. Everybody wants more, more, more. And we have a very exciting journey going forward. But the game of SmartFit has been very, very difficult and motivating. And the motivating part for me is to see the effect it's having on people, to bring joy into the gym and that motivation to exercise and the joy of stroke patients getting the use of a limb back quickly. This is the reward I get, the motivation I get to keep on. So with that, I'm sharing a picture of my favorite friend, Angela Bell, who came and worked out with us once. I picked her up at the car and she hung on me the whole way to the gym. And a few hours later, she walked out, flinging her arms in the air and just thinking she was the bee's knees. So this is Angela. Bottom line is the brain interacts with the world through our body. And if we make that fun, it just simply works. Let me see how I can get this slide to work. It's not been very friendly here. There we go. So I have an argument. I'm not a scientist. I have an argument that there's something in our DNA that ties to how we evolved. And that is when we exercise in a way that's similar to how we evolved, the results and the outcomes are so much faster. And I think this explains why our customers and our clients are just seeing such fast results. And so the whole key is if I'm going to go and exercise, I want how much do I have to do before I see results? Well, we're finding that with the gamification side of things, we're seeing faster than usual results. And my phone is going crazy. Sorry about that. Okay, so just picking up off what Mike's been saying, again, I'm looking at how I got started as a former school teacher and what I noticed about learning and kids that don't want to learn and kids with ADHD, etc. The bottom line is when you turn it into a game, they get into it. And if you look at all kinds of species, they all learn through play. And so what we're trying to do with SMARTfit is to introduce that level of play and all of the components that Mike has just talked about into the way we train people. We talk about gamification, but there's so much more that goes with it. There's learning, there's skill, achievement, competition, setting goals, meeting challenges, and user engagement, and also the social engagement that happens when we get people to play together. It's so much fun. There's something else about when we train the cognitive side of the brain alongside with the physical training. We call it dual tasking, and Mike is an expert in dual tasking, and he's talked a lot about this in so many venues. But we're learning more and more. When you train the brain and body together, the outcomes are faster. It's a natural part of that evolutionary thing that we see. And in addition to that, and I'm quoting Dr. Rob Winningham here, and that is when you exercise the brain, the executive function, the decision-making side of it, the transference is not just directly to what you trained, but it moves to further components of life, activities of daily living. It improves your working memory, impulse control, emotional control. It trains you to problem solve, you make good decisions, pause and then act, and it helps with planning and prioritization. This is something all of us need, no matter what age we are. We need to have better working memory and better transference to activities of daily living. To me, this is the reason why I get up every day, and that is we're providing a technology that aligns with our DNA that produces this ability to transfer. And if you ask me if that's important for children, just think about what's happening to our children on social media all the time. They're losing their working memory. They're losing their ability to hold their attention to tasks and complete tasks. So again, I gave up teaching to do this, but I still feel that I'm contributing. So the next thing is, how does SMARTfit work? And Mike spoke extensively about dosage. You don't want to overwhelm and frighten people. I can't do that. I'll never do that. That's so, it's just not for me, etc. And you also don't want to bore them. So boredom is a terrible thing. So what we've done with the SMARTfit technology is that we've developed the tools in that for you to dial up what you want to focus on: executive function, attention, memory, language, processing speed. And then on the physical side, because it's a dual task, we're doing cognitive and physical. What physical activity are you going to do while you're exercising your brain? Resistance training, cardio, motor, balance, functional training. So we've made it possible for you to dial it up so that you can match the ability of the person. And this is a reason why we haven't pushed this out for individual play yet. We're going to come out with tools to help people on self-play and self-management. But right now, It's for the therapist and the trainer to know their client and to know how to match up this cognitive challenge with a physical challenge to meet them where they are and take them to where they want to go when it comes to meeting their physical and cognitive outcomes in the world. Again, I'm repeating again what Mike said. All the best games, again from Nolan Bushnell, all the best games are easy to learn and difficult to master. And that is something that we've absolutely focused on. These are easy games to learn, but you come back and you master them and you master them and you raise the difficulty, you increase the challenges. And this way you keep at it. It's very similar to the computer games or the app games that we play. But with SmartFit, you're engaging the physical and the cognitive at the same time, and we're bringing along both together. Okay. There are two kinds of games in SmartFit. One is we call the bottom-up training, the lower rule complexity games. And I'm going to explain what that is in this short video. And then we'll focus on the more extensive games where SmartFit really has made a focus on the high complexity games. So there's a pathway where people can get started and where they can evolve to the very high complexity games. The lady I mentioned at the Bristol last November, I met, she was playing all of the high complexity games at high speed. So when you watch these games, this video, just think about a woman in her 90s, honestly, on a walker, getting in there and then sitting down and just coming alive, playing these really high challenging games. And it was just so exciting to see the effect of that. So I'm going to play this video and someone can text me if the sound doesn't work.
SmartFit's lower rule complexity games. These games keep cognitive rules simple while keeping the body working hard. Rally Wall lets you sensitize any area on the station, regardless of where the targets are located. It's ideal for ball play and challenges processing speed, open-ended decision-making, and visual perceptual skills. Knock the Lights Out turns on multiple targets at once. The player's job, turn them off as fast as possible. The unpredictability of it makes the tool great for processing speed, visual search, and decision making. Track games use one target at a time and progress sequentially. It's ideal for visual search, sustained attention, and response time. You can layer on complexity by adding clients to vocalize. For example, say a noun starting with the letter displayed. Chase is a single lit target that must be touched within a set time. Miss it and it moves. Transition speed is adjustable to match participants' capability. It's effective for processing and response time. Go, no-go builds directly on chase. Hit the go targets, avoid the no-go targets. The number, frequency, and speed of avoid targets can be adjustable to scale difficulty. This is one of the most effective formats for building selective attention, inhibitory control, and decision-making under pressure.
Okay, that was the what we call the easy games. You can make them as hard as you like. And I will get this one ready while I set this up again to slideshow. Oh my goodness, slideshow. All right, and these are the high complexity games.
SmartFit's higher cognitive demand formats. These games place higher emphasis on decision-making, stimulus discrimination, and maintaining task rules while moving. Seek presents multiple choice options for several targets. The player must decide which one to strike. It challenges selective attention, visual search speed, decision-making, and inhibitory control all at once. Left-right both adds a side-based rule to the familiar track format. The player has to maintain that rule, left, right, or both, while responding quickly, simple in concept, demanding in execution. Metronome trains rhythm and timing. Taps must sync with an audible tone. Add metronome, seek for multiple choice demands, or adjust tempo to scale difficulty. It builds attention, timing, and response consistency. Pattern recognition lights up all targets at once, and players must find the matching pairs. Adjust symbol and color settings to increase cognitive load. This one develops visual search, decision-making, pattern discrimination, and visual memory. Stroop is classic for a reason. In Stroop ladder, a green check or red X indicates whether to strike congruent or incongruent targets. In Stroop match-mismatch, a color word appears and the player must strike targets that either match or don't match the spelled color. Both formats are powerful for inhibitory control and selective attention. Flanker displays combinations on the center target. The player identifies the direction of the middle arrow and strikes towards it, while filtering the competing arrows around it. It's a strong challenge for selective attention, inhibitory control, and processing speed. Corsi block challenges visual spatial working memory. A sequence of highlights moves across white targets. Once it ends, the player reproduces the order. Each successful round adds one more step. 3 errors end the game. Trail making comes in 2 versions. Trail making A, strike numbers in ascending order. Trail B, alternate between numbers and letters. A 1, an A, a 2, a B, all the way to L. Both versions develop processing speed, visual search, and executive function. Trail B adds task switching demands. Digit span presents a number sequence on the center target. The player replicates it forward or backward. Each correct round adds 1 digit. 3 consecutive errors ends the round. It directly targets working memory, attention, and executive function. Serial sevens is straightforward and cognitively demanding. A starting number appears, the player subtracts by 7 and keeps going continuously, with speed and accuracy both measured. The memory category covers several formats. Memory pairs is a classic matching game. Targets reveal on touch and stay revealed only if matched. Pairing resets the board after each correct match and races the clock. Memory sequences has players reproduce the number and letter sequences following the letter or number displayed on the center target at the start of the game. Equations present a math problem on the center target. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, squares, or square roots, with the multiple choice answers surrounding it. It layers working memory and decision-making on top of a physical movement. Spelling presents a word with the multiple choice letter options on the surrounding targets. Custom word lists can be uploaded from the Build tab, making this a flexible tool for language and verbal memory training.
Oops, sorry. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I keep losing this one, but bear with me.
SMARTfit's
There we go. So I just give a little story about myself. I was the ninth of 13 children born in Africa. And when I came to the United States, there was so much from my African early life that just called out to me about the difference in a first world country versus growing up on a farm in a very rural area. It was that rural that the children only started to wear clothes when they hit puberty. So growing up in that environment and then coming to the United States, I was surprised at how differently we live our lives. And the other part of it is being one of 13 children on a farm. The way we did entertainment was we played. We had games of all kinds. My mom and dad would be the goalkeepers, and we would all play soccer against each other. So I grew up in a very play-intensive environment. And for me, the skills I learned at play just stuck with me. And so we're now living in a very modern world. And the first thing I heard would be, we have to keep children safe and we have to keep them in that space and we have to have them escorted everywhere. So gone are the days when, when parents could say, be home for dinner when the street lights go on, that's gone. And we've lost that. So the reason for creating the SMARTfit technology has been to create a technology that provides that impetus in a technology in a safe environment where you can have the person be the input device. So this is not a technology where the technology looks smart and fancy. It's a technology that's getting the person to be the smart input device. And so it's a little contrary to traditional technology, but it's designed to do exactly what it is achieving, which is it sets the environment for play and gamification that transfers to real life skills. And it's just wonderful when I see, one of the other stories I have is I have a close friend who is regularly actually, she's on this screen right now, who um, is a regular SmartFit player, plays 5 times a week. And I witnessed her in her front yard with 2 potted plants in her hand and wearing flip-flops, running up the front stairs of her home. And she slipped off the flip-flops. And what I witnessed was this amazing slow motion lift, 180 pivot, and soft landing with the 2 plants still in her hands. And she's 77 years of age. And all I can say is, I just said to her, that is SmartFit. That is absolutely SmartFit. That your reactions were so fine tuned and your physical control was so clear that without thinking, you automatically landed yourself safe. And so there's so many stories of how this transference is helping us to stay active in a modern world. Um, Let me see if I can get to the last one. Again, I'm having technical trouble today. Let's see. There we go. So this is me. SmartFit gamification is for the kid in all of us. And on that note, I cede back to Mike.
Excellent, Kathy, so much. Thank you for just what a wonderful presentation. Helps to embody the spirit of the theory and principles of motivation that I started us off with. We're happy to open it up for the audience questions at this point. If you'd like to use either chat or Q&A, we can handle either of those. Do you have any points of clarification? Anything that you would like us to reiterate a little bit more, or even any points of contradiction, or something that would be potentially a case that you would like to offer to us? Would this work for a person that I'm working with? So we're happy to take questions at this point. Kathy, while we're waiting for some of those questions to populate through, your presentation engaged me on both the lower level games and higher level games. And I know that the library that SmartFit has built now has really given you the opportunity to be able to serve individuals at whatever level they come to. Uh, do you feel that people should just start playing and see what engages them or what they're good at? Or do you feel like they should go through a testing first? What's your recommendation if you just have somebody that you want to introduce the SmartFit to?
Mike, that's a great question because one of the things that motivates me is I want to know I'm getting better.
Mhm.
I had a surgery recently and then I had to go to physical therapy for 3 months and I didn't know if it was helping. There was just no
Mm.
measure, right? So I highly recommend that when people start, they start with a baseline test, and we've got the
Mhm.
cognitive tests and the dual task cost tests. And I really recommend people start there, get a baseline, and then start easy you know. There are over 3,000 video supported activities in the system, all broken up into folders to meet each demographic group. So if you're in
Mhm.
a wheelchair, and if you've been in a wheelchair for a long time, you don't want to go and do anything ridiculous. You want to start slowly. So take your baseline tests and then get into the folder for seated, assisted level, and start simple. So
Mhm.
within those games, within those activities, we have what we call level ones. And then there's level twos and level threes. Don't jump to the level threes. Do the level ones until you feel really good. And then
Yeah.
move to the level twos and then to the level threes. That will build your confidence, your self-esteem, your motivation. And then every 6 weeks, when you go and take another test, you're going to see the markers heading in the right direction. And that's the motivation that works. It really does.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's a great recommendation and comes from your practical lived experience. George asks a question. I hear a lot about action comes before motivation. He put that in quotes. Can you clarify that expression? How can I explain that to a client? And George, I think for myself that that largely is true. And I don't know that any aphorism that we would have is universally true for all people. However, I believe that there can be some degree of appetizing that can come from experience. I'm good at this. I'd like to do better at this. And you can be motivated and driven by your initial actions. I think there's some degree of semantics that can be at play, though, because if you just watch people play golf, baseball, pickleball, is that considered to be an action, or are you motivated without an action? So I think there's some degree of a lot of degree of truth in that, but I wouldn't consider it to be an absolute. How would you describe this to a client? I would actually use some of those very same examples. Are you motivated by watching other people and then trying to imitate them? Or are you motivated by watching yourself perform and then getting better? As simple as sitting down in a semi-recumbent elliptical. I scored a 47 as hard as I could get in watts. Can I beat that? Yes. Action comes before motivation, potentially. Jennifer, thank you for your compliment and always your attendance. Kathy, did you want to add anything to George's answer there or George's question, my answer?
Well, I'm one of those people that have always been, I grew up just, if it wasn't like real life stuff, I didn't want to do it. But when it came to a time when I had to exercise, I didn't want to do it. So what I had
Hmm.
to do was I had to find ways to get myself to do it. And so, and very, one of the keys for that for me was put it in the 1-2 basket, motivate myself by making it a 1-2. Definitely get it out of that have-to basket. But regardless, there've been many times when it's just like, no, I don't want to do it, and that's when I just turn my brain off, get up and move. And it's a
Yeah.
matter of minutes that the motivation starts to kick in. And that's just a visual thing. By the end of it,
Yeah.
I'm motivated to come back.
Yeah. And Kathy, you always have such brilliance because your lived experiences, you say, I'm not a scientist and this is just what I know and this is how I grew up. And I believe that we're motivated by primitive principles and behaviors and actions. It always amazes me that what you say has foundations in science. And here you've done it again because some of the most prolific behavioral economists and writers on habits say there's a 2 minute rule. If you don't feel like doing something, try it for at least 2 minutes and then see how you feel once you're in it for 2 minutes and you've embodied that again. Um, Nabila makes a comment more so than a question. Thank you for supporting me in the research of how to help individuals and older adults, especially, respond more positively, live more healthily. And Nabila offers his compliments for your stories then as well. Ant says he's going to have to look up Nolan Bushnell's law. And thanks for the great presentation. Irit asks a question that I might not be the most well suited to answer. What can you do with people that have vision impairments? Now, there's a broad umbrella or a spectrum of vision impairments. Kathy, I'll let you answer that if you would.
Well, I wish I didn't jump in on you. I think you would give a more clinical answer, but I have one story. We were in the Netherlands, and the trainer and a trainee of the Netherlands soccer team were there. And when they asked us to, demonstrate the system, it was a matter of minutes when TJ pointed out that he had a blind spot on his right side. And he just went, have you noticed he's just missing the targets when he's in this area and when he's positioned this way? And it was like an epiphany for everybody. Oh my God, but you're looking at professional sports, not picking it up and not understanding why he could play well on one side of the field, but not on the other.
Yeah.
So I don't know to what degree this kind of training improves vision, but it certainly, I think it plays a part, but I don't know.
Yeah, there is something to be said there. If an individual has a hemianopsia or a scotoma, a visual field cut, there's many different things that we could talk about there. And yes, a visual field cut could be a hemianopsia. You could additionally have neglect without a hemianopsia. By having a screen that has the demand for a person to search for answers, the solution, the next letter or the right number, or for the appropriate symbol that's being chased, at least we can say that with the SMARTfit board, the vision cannot be solely and uniformly directed to the center, that an individual has to try to appreciate either by turning their head to compensate, or by not neglecting one side of the environment. So there is some supply that can come from demand. If the nature of the question comes from if they're fully blind, I don't have an answer. If the nature of the question comes from if they're visually impaired, we still have a lot of games in the library that can be recognized based on, is there a light and where is the light? And remember, last thing I'll say here, for an individual that is losing some degree of vision, macular degeneration, and the list goes on, if they don't have a stimulus that commands them to recognize what visual stimuli they can see, they'll lose it even faster. So we don't want to use it and lose it principle there. I'll look at the next question though here as well. Carol says, how can we obtain a copy of your outline or your presentation? What are some cognitive games one can play on a cell phone? Those are good thoughts. I know that we can send the handout to you. And Carol, I might be more inclined to try to give you a larger and longer answer for cognitive strategies that are outside of the SMARTfit, that maybe are low tech. I don't know of a lot of great opportunities on a cell phone, perhaps. But Kathy, as a final question that we addressed, do you want to touch that question at all?
Well, firstly, the video I showed today is an extract from a much more extensive video that we will be making available to you.
Okay.
There's a lot more explanation and support that we will make available. When it comes to games and high cognitive games on the app, I'm a little bit of an addict. I don't go a day without playing a bunch of them. And I do know it works. And Ryan Glatt is another game addict, and he also believes that it helps. It's not a dual task, but it might be a dual task for my thumbs. But I love the games, and I love the challenge of the high cognitive games. So I play advanced Sudoku, and I can go on. But it just it wakes me up, you know. So
Yeah.
I have to say that there's got to be benefit from that.
Yes. Yeah. That's great. And it's a great spot for us to wrap up. Thank you all for your attendance, your attention, and for your questions. For Kathy Lamberti, I'm Mike Studer, and we'll see you at the seventh installment. Do I recall correctly that that's June 9th? I think that is the next one. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, but I believe that is the next
I'm
one.
not sure. I'm not
Okay.
sure. We'll
Well,
let everybody
we'll get
know.
handouts to you and emails to all of you to let you know when the next installment is. Thank you so much and have a great day, all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.